I will do the socials. Dave will introduce the guest. Chicago Maritime Museum.org. On the tube of you, it's at Chicago Maritime Museum 1, as in the number 1, not the letters that spell 1. On the gram of Instagram, it is Chicago Maritime Museum, and on the Book of Face, it is Chi Maritime Museum, SCHI, as in Chi-Town. Chi Maritime Museum. Dave, introduce us away.
Yes, to break right through all of that, Madeline Crispell is joining us. Madeline is the curator at the Chicago Maritime Museum. Madeline, good morning and welcome and Happy New Year.
Morning, guys. Happy New Year. Very happy to be here this morning.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I'm thrilled to have you. I watched the first episode of Making Waves and
Oh, well, thank you. It
and
makes you and my mom. I appreciate that.
and I hit that like button too. But you guys, I just want to tell our listeners now that you put together a series. I think there's 12 in the series. They're about 20, 25 minutes long and really insightful, not just about the museum itself, but about the maritime history of Chicago, Illinois. And there is definitely a maritime history of Chicago, Illinois. Chicago, Illinois wouldn't be there if it wasn't surrounded by water in the first place, right?
Well, that's right. That's exactly right.
And
it's the fact that we're in between the two superhighways of the continent before we had the actual highways, the Mississippi River and the Great Lakes.
Now, I'm at the bottom of that Mississippi River. I'm here in New Orleans. For 7 years, 3 in high school and 4 in college, I've worked 7 years, summers and nights on the river. As a fleet man, I broke and made tow for a big barge company here. Some of those barges came from your neck of the woods.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But what really got me, and I thought this might be a pretty good place to kind of start our actual conversation here and talking about the museum and what you guys do. I was really, really surprised and a little hurt too when you said back in 1881, Chicago, the Port of Chicago did more business than New Orleans, Philadelphia, and New York City combined. I thought, holy cow, that's saying something. And that might be a good place to jump in here.
Sure. Well, let me explain why that is. A series of canals open in the 19th century, the Erie Canal in 1825, the Illinois and Michigan Canal in 1848. And what that does is it links up waterways that previously, if you're taking your canoe down the Des Plaines River trying to get to the Great Lakes, you're going to have to portage it, take your canoe out. These canals link up all the waterways so that now, you can take goods from a boat in New York City and you can get them down to New Orleans without ever having to go over the land. Go up the Hudson River, over the Erie Canal, the Great Lakes, takes you to Chicago, you take another canal to the Des Plaines, you end up in the Mississippi, and that takes you down to New Orleans. And so because of that, Chicago is at everybody else's journey. We are a leg of the trip no matter where you are taking things. So let's say you are a farmer in the Midwest and you have grain that's going to go out to the cities on the East Coast. That's going to pass through Chicago. The rail, all of these other transportation technologies are a part of the shipping that's happening on the water as well.
Well, Madeline, there's one more little detail I'll share with you about me. When that canoe hits the Des Plaines through Joliet, Illinois, that's my hometown.
Oh, no, you're kidding. A very important area for our history here.
I know you're from the north side.
Yes, that's right. I grew up on the North Shore originally. The museum is located in Bridgeport, though. So, I'm rooting for the White Sox these days.
I will say this, too. It's a great reminder, too, about why there's a connection between the two cities, particularly when it comes to music. And it's a great reminder when you have that kind of main line, it's not that hard because once the travel pattern gets established, it is very easy to figure out other ways and other routes that kind of move along the same sort of direction as well, too. I mean, I was talking with a good friend of mine about the fact that a lot of people don't realize the I-10 corridor for a large portion of it actually is the same path that many Native Americans walked from Texas all the way to Florida on a regular basis.
Right, absolutely.
And so...
you see that across these transportation technologies. Your listeners are following in the footsteps of very, very long pathways that connected the areas of the country. You might look at a highway and think it is brand new, but exactly as you said, that is probably you're retracing the path that people have been taking for millennia.
Mm-hmm. And I was also laughing about it. This is a really wild story. So, we're in New Orleans now, and my neighborhood that I grew up in was Lakeview, the one that got basically destroyed in 30 minutes by Hurricane Katrina. So we go back there in the aftermath, and of course there isn't anything there. I mean, it is dead silent because all the white noise, all the electrical fixtures have all been knocked out. And this is a great reminder of how people used to travel back in the day. We could hear this whisper in the background, this whisper in the background. I said, Dad, what the hell is that? And he goes, that, son, is Lake Pontchartrain. And people forget that bodies of water, even when you walk alongside of them, the walk is cooler, the walk is breezier, the walk is more organized, and it's also a great place to escape from things who might be coming for you as well. So these routes, maritime routes, provide not just a direction, but they provide real security and real kind of certainty on them as well when they create these networks. And it's a really cool thing that you guys are doing over there because you're looking at the history of this stuff. But you're also looking at the dangers, because I know a lot of the stuff that you guys talk about is things that go incredibly sideways as well. There's incredible danger to being on the water. Kennedy might have been right, from the sea we come and to the sea we shall return, but sometimes we return too soon, as Odysseus has proven over and over again. Talk to us a little bit about when you arrive at the museum, what that experience is like for the first-time visitor.
Sure. So you come into the museum. We are located in a very cool building, the Bridgeport Arts Center. It used to be a warehouse for a company that supplied hotels and passenger steamers, and then the Spiegel Catalog Company bought it in the 40s.
Hadn't heard that word in a long time. Yikes.
So, we've got these big, huge, cool freight elevators, and we are down on the river level. So our gallery looks out over Bubbly Creek, which is an infamous stretch of the Chicago River going right through what used to be the meatpacking district. And you kind of walk through Chicago's maritime history. So we start you out with some big maps that situate you, show you the shoreline, and then you're going to walk through. You'll see canoes, schooners. You're going to see, like you said, some highlights of darker episodes in the lake's history. The Eastland Disaster, 844 people died when a boat capsized in the Chicago River. That's one of the deadliest peacetime maritime disasters in U.S. history, not just Chicago. And then, you're going to follow around, learn about World War II and the aircraft carriers on Lake Michigan. We've got model ships, all kinds of things. We've got a whole exhibit dedicated to the Lady Elgin, which is a little-known shipwreck, but the deadliest in Great Lakes history. So a lot of stuff to sink your teeth in.
You mentioned the Eastland Disaster. I had not heard of that until I saw your video and saw the site. Over 800 people were killed on this schooner in the Chicago River, middle of downtown, but it was tied to the dock. Is there an explanation of how that could possibly happen?
Yeah, so the Eastland is a steamship. It's chartered by the Western Electric Company to take their employees to Michigan City, Indiana for a summer picnic. And, this is a period, an explosion in passenger steam travel. And, you see companies kind of cutting quarters and, we're repairing the deck with concrete where it should have been repaired with wood, letting thousands more people on boats than they were designed for. This disaster, it happens in 1915. That's just a couple years after the Titanic. Mm-hmm. Everybody understood that was so bad because they didn't have enough lifeboats. So the Eastland owners, they loaded up with lifeboats, but they put them all on the top. So you've got 5 times too many people, all these lifeboats. It's very top-heavy. And on that morning, it had been seen listing in ports for years. It was listing terribly, and it just lists and lists. That's tipping in the water, and it tips over right into the Chicago River.
Wow. And they were all going to a picnic. That is tragic on several levels for sure. One of the least known is, if I went to Chicago and talked to people on the street, would anybody know about this?
Not as many people as you'd think for being
Yeah.
the single deadliest day in our city's history.
Yeah.
I grew up never having heard of this.
Well, I know that
It
because
wasn't
you said that
until
on the video. Yeah.
yeah, you heard my cemetery story then.
Yes.
But
So that is how I learned about this disaster. I visited Bohemian National Cemetery in Chicago, and I noticed rows and rows of graves that all had the same end date. And that's how I became curious in that history.
By the way, in case you're wondering how Madeline got the job of curator at this museum, I think she's proven it over the last
Pretty
11
much.
minutes. By the way, since '82, what the museum has done is collected items as well that commemorate Chicago's maritime history. It's got more than 6,000 items have accumulated, including watercraft models, articles, books, displays, art, images, and artifacts. And as they say in the website, seldom does a week pass without an addition to the collection that contributes to understanding Chicago's maritime history. The best museums are not just places where people go to see and people go to enjoy and spend a day. That makes them wonderful. What makes them important is they're also resources for researchers so that people like you have a place to go if they are in fact are doing books about what happened on the Great Lakes, what happened in the city of Chicago in regards to prohibition. All of that kind of stuff plays a part of this. Talk about the center as a research center and what it can do for people who are looking to dive deeper beyond just a great day with their friends and family.
Sure. Well, first of all, dive deeper. Appreciate the maritime
You're
lingo
welcome.
already.
I'll be here all week. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We find all kinds of people use us as a resource. I mean, one of our big constituents is model shipbuilders. So if you're trying to create a historic model, we are a great resource to see, schematics and details of historic ships. We have a lot of people who come in researching family. They have a great-grandfather who was an Irish canal boat captain in the 19th century. We've got a lot of people who are interested in the city now. The number of times I've been contacted by a company that's trying to figure out, what was on this stretch of the river that they just bought. So there's kind of no end to what people could use us for. Water touches every aspect of city living, and so if your history has some kind of intersection with the water, we have something here for you.
By the way, also, I want to make sure people understand great museums aren't just about a visit. They're not just about research. They're also about communities. And you guys have a heck of a community. You have a lecture series. You have educational programs. And every once in a while you throw a fundraiser or a party. There's a lot of good stuff to do for people who are looking to get involved either in real life or virtually. Can you kind of tell us the kind of stuff that you offer your members and your friends?
Oh, all kinds of things. So you're right. We've got this monthly lecture series, the third Friday of every month. We've got someone coming in talking about maritime history. And, we see that really broadly. We might have someone come in. They're talking about, the role of Chicago in the Navy during the Civil War. We might have a poet come in and do a reading. We're looking at this really broadly. We've got all kinds of events for our volunteers. We've got this amazing volunteer program. I am the museum's only full-time staff member, so there are a lot of ways to get involved. We make sure we do a lot of development, make sure people are up to the new material in the museum. And, we've got a lot of fun programs, concerts, saltless sea shanties. There's a lot you can do with us.
I'm looking at pictures of the models, and I can see why people would come to you to get details on some of these things. That Le Griffin, though, where did that come from?
Yeah, the Griffon. So
Griffon.
Maybe the oldest ship to have been built on the Great Lakes, a French ship. This is one of those where archaeologists, divers, people keep thinking they found the Griffin. They keep not finding it, but very historically important ship, and we have this incredible team of model builders who work at the museum. We've got a whole model ship studio, and so that's all done by volunteers as well. So anybody listening on the airwaves right now, if you are interested in building model ships, please look us up at the Chicago Maritime Museum. I've got a whole studio for you.
Well, let me give you a connection here that Johnny Cash did back in 1970. He had a TV show for a while, and he did a medley called the Great Truckin' Medley. It was about 6 minutes long, and he did all of these songs, put them together. but he called truck drivers sailors on the concrete seas.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I thought you would.
Well, it's very true. It's a tradition
Yeah.
that your listeners are taking part of. That goes all the way back to those guys who were hauling lumber on the Great Lakes.
Talk to us a little bit about Madeline. By the way, Madeline's one of my favorite names in the world, and Dave knows why it's one of my
Thank
favorite
you.
names in the world because it's the name of my goddaughter.
Oh,
And I wanted to kind of ask you about curation itself because there's some really great stuff you guys did earlier this year. Wonderful photography exhibit. Talk to us about the programming and the decisions you have to make in order to kind of what goes where and when it goes there and how you decide to then change things up to make sure that there's always something to return to for the people who are there for the first time. They can see the kind of foundational stuff, but then you've got to make sure the people who are there with you and who love this stuff get to see the new or the newly kind of discovered in certain kind of presentations and collections.
well, it's a great question, and obviously something I think about a lot. Especially, we've got so many different audiences who are coming in through the museum. And, I recognize that a group of third graders from Gary, Indiana, who are coming as an after-school program, they're going to have a totally different set of questions from the Chicago Underwater Archaeological Society, which meets here the last Wednesday of every month.
I don't
And
know,
so
though. I mean, they're all kids at heart, aren't they? I
sometimes
mean,
similar. Everyone's curious, and that's what matters. And so trying to follow that curiosity, talking to as many people as I can who come through the museum. What are they interested in? What drove their visit? They're really curious about building canoes, or they're really curious about, a grandfather who worked in the lumber industry. And so, over time you have these conversations with your volunteers, with your visitors. You get a sense of what people are interested in, and that's when you go to the collection and see, well, how can I answer some of these questions we're getting with some of our objects? And there's also sometimes an impulse of, what do I really like that we have back in storage? What do I want to get out on view? And so that's informed a lot of our exhibitions, new highlights for the collection. I'm getting ready right now to put out whole bunch of stuff this year. This June is our 10th anniversary in our space in Bridgeport. And so highlighting some of the things that have come in those 10 years that haven't been on view yet. There's a drafting table and chair and tools from Henry Greeby, who had Greeby's Shipyard, one of the most important shipyards in Chicago. They built the wooden minesweepers during World War II. That has to be a wooden ship so it doesn't set off the mine. All of that was happening in Chicago. And so, just making sure, exactly as you said, we've got our permanent exhibits, so no matter when you come, you're going to have some basic questions answered. Why was Chicago a landlocked, city in a landlocked state? Why was that the busiest port in the country? We answer those questions, and then, we hope that you'll leave with new ones, and then you'll come back and see our temporary exhibits, which will answer those.
Now, how did you wind up getting in the position that you are in? As a little girl, were you into boating and stuff like that?
Yeah, I wish I could say I was. I get really seasick. So, I grew up as a kid going to Lake Michigan, but not on Lake Michigan.
Yeah, she can't even get on one of the boats.
No, the river cruise, I'm taking Dramamine. But, I grew up very interested in Chicago history and history in general. And, the animating question for me has always been, what was life like then? And that's a really broad question, but I've worked at a lot of cool museums in Chicago. I spent a long time in the cartography department at the Newberry Library, which is an amazing free institution that I recommend to everybody. And so all of that kind of got me curious. Chicago, the answer of what question was what was life like at that point, water is going to pop up in that answer pretty often. And so that drew me kind of naturally to being interested in the waterways.
What do you got coming up almost immediately that you're excited about? And then we got to shuffle off this radio coil because, good God Almighty, we could talk to you all morning about this. What has got you really stoked?
Yeah, we have a fantastic lecture coming up on the 23rd in the evening, 7 o'clock. Ted Karamansky, fantastic historian, formerly of Loyola University, just retired, and thankfully now has more time to write. He's got a book coming out called The Unnatural History of Lake Michigan that he's going to be doing a talk about here. talking all about how Lake Michigan is a body of water, unique in that it has been altered and changed by people for thousands of years. So looking at that whole span of history.
The unnatural history of Lake Michigan. You got to love that. I love that title.
That's right.
Promise this will come back when you get more, when you get new exhibits and new objects.
Oh,
and new
anytime,
curation.
guys.
Good,
You know.
Good God Almighty! And tell your book author we're going to be reaching out to him as well to get him on there. We like that. We like adventure.
Absolutely, I
we
will.
like adventure over here, and this sounds like one heck of an adventure, guys. Once again, with feeling from the top, make your way over to ChicagoMaritimeMuseum.org. You can find them on YouTube at Chicago Maritime Museum 1. Why does there need to be a 1? Somebody else took that. Shame on them. Instagram.
I know, shocker.
I know. Chicago Maritime Museum, you can find on Instagram. See, people weren't screwing around over there. And on the Facebook, you can find them at Chi Maritime Museum. Madeline Crispell, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. Keep up the good work.